Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahavidyam karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Yesterday we introduced the example, Drishtanta, that shows us how we can understand this idea of Sakshi or the witness. In the happenings of the world, with so much going on, it's so easy to mistake every interaction as real, first of all. Secondly, also very easy to get caught up in the roles that we find ourselves in and assume and say, this is my reality, I am this or I am that. Now, this example clearly goes through breaking up and analyzing every single aspect of this inner instrument and how that projects in the way that I think and the way that I live. Mindset and lifestyle is shown right here. Now, again, what are the components that we have? The audience, praja, the people there in that assembly that represents the variety of sense objects available to me. The musicians that play, they are those sense organs. Thriving or being demoralized by the sense objects and aiming to capture their attention. Then you have the dancer, the mind. The one whose pacing, rhythm, very metrics go with what the sense objects are making the sense organs do. So playing to the tune of the musicians is that dancer. And then above all of them, that supreme patron, that Raja, that ego, which is seated up front, that runs this entire show. And all of this, what we neglect to even consider, forget revering or respecting, we don't even consider this Sakshi, that witness, that light, illumining and making everything even possible. Illumining everything equally. That's one concept we'll look at today. Now, what do we have to look at going further? Let's revisit that 7th shloka, the one we concluded with last time. Antarmukhahamityesha vritti kartaramullikhet bahirmukhedamityesha bahyam vastvidamullikhet. There's an internal form of I, antarmukha. And there is an external form of the thought, which is bahirmukha, everything that is thought of as this or that. I is the internal thought, this is the external thought. Every single thought modification has these two components in it. I could say, this laptop is a thought that I have. That's the part that I express to myself, this laptop. What am I essentially saying, though? I know this laptop. I see this laptop. I perceive this laptop. The I component is there, antarmukha. Bahirmukha, external thought of this laptop is also there. In every single thought, there is that parenthetical fraction aspect, splice of I know, I see, I perceive, in everything. Now, the thing we have to really consider here is, what is that I we're speaking of? In the daily world where I interact with various objects, that I comes down to this assemblage right here. And so this is everything outside of that. If I consider myself, I is this body, everything outside of this body is external. What if I've matured even more as a sadhaka, though? Body identification is not that strong. I consider maybe my intellect to be I. Then that is that internal thought modification. Everything else that is that from this intellect outwards, the mind, the sense organs, this very body, the objects, everything else is external from that standpoint. So what is this I that matters supremely here? Now, what are some various viewpoints then? And these are not just random viewpoints. These are major philosophies and their viewpoints on what this I even is. There's one entire school of thought that says, I is speaking of our dependence as ourself. Extremely deluded people. Where it's not that hard to imagine. My son or daughter is the self. Imagine. Where a parent's attention goes the most. Vicarious achievements that they may not have been able to fulfill, they want to fulfill through their children. Just go to a little league game, you'll see that so ardently. 12-year-olds playing baseball, or like the baseball bat's bigger than the 12-year-old kid, yet the parent, if there's a call that's missed, they yell at the ref like it's the World Series of the MLB. You have parents like that. Where that identification is so strong then. My kid's performance is a reflection of me. In our community, you can say when that comes time for the kid to go to college, which university that kid attends, that is a reflection of me as a parent, how I've raised them. What occupation they take up, what their starting salary is. All of this we internalize so deeply. This idea of self, I, how is I even valued, that is based on someone else completely. And let alone the pressure I put on that other individual, that delusion is not only am I not understanding I am not this body, I'm considering myself a different body completely. It's easy to fall into that. The philosophy isn't wrong. Many people do believe that way. One step up from that, another school of thought, we can say Charvaka, it's a school of thought. This physical body is the self. In Taittiriya Upanishad, we see this entire sharira, body, is comprised of annam, food. That's how it's sustained as well. That's how it goes back as well, carbon. Now, how does this express? None of us walk around saying, I am the body. That's not how this expresses. I am short, I am tall, I am dark, I am fair, I am skinny, I am fat. These are the ways that it expresses. That I am, what I consider to be I, the very first thought is, what is that physical presence right there? Talk to the chick members, and they're in that stage where they're exploring the world of dating and relationships and partners and life partners and all of this. So I'm very honest with them. I say, okay, what are you looking for in a person? Very first thought. I mean, they're in their early 20s, late teens. They say, I want someone who's attractive. Okay, what does that mean to you? Oh, they have to look a certain way. I said, okay. Say someone is handsome or beautiful. You find that in a person. If you cannot hold an intelligent conversation with that person, does their looks make up for that fact? I throw these kinds of questions at them just to see what is their thinking. And they think for a second, yeah, you're right, actually. I want someone that actually has common interests, this and that. So infatuation, that is basic level of attraction is that. Even with ourselves then, that's for how we view other people. That can happen to how we view ourselves as well. That physically, if I'm not looking a certain way, my worth matters on that. There's so many disorders that come about from that kind of thinking. The self being this physical body, that is a philosophy, whether we know it or not, we may be holding on to. That happens. With the expectation, the delusion that really comes in is, the expectation is this body will always remain the way it is. Which there's a whole industry now. Whether it's not just hair coloring, but reversing hair loss, Botox to keep the skin taut, and other things I won't even get into as age goes. These are all things that are fighting things that are natural. That which naturally does occur, whether it's graying or whether it's weight, all of these things are natural in life. Reversing that and stopping that is not the norm. but there's entire cottage industries for that because we've taken the self as this physical body. That is the ultimate thing to be preserved. It's not just philosophy, we see it in practice. More subtle than that, then. Some people say that the sense organs are the self. We're hair splitting here for a reason. I'm building up to something. Where it's not just this entire physical body and appearance, the sense organs specifically are the self. Prajapati ji says this in Chandogya Upanishad. For what reason? That based on the performance of the sense organs, that is how we measure the functionality, optimal efficiency of this body. Sight, hearing. When these kinds of senses diminish over time, or if you're lucky to be born with diminished senses in this way, then you see the body performs at a less optimal level. Therefore, this very self, if it's of the nature of knowledge and having to ascertain things and learn things, these senses that bring in this information and data must be perfect and optimal and efficient. Therefore, when they dip, this entire process goes as well. Therefore, the sense organs are the self. That's one way of thinking. A little more subtle than that, pranas are the self. How do we say that? Even if my sense organs are working, optimal, efficient, when I express things like I am hungry, I am thirsty, if I have not ate in a long time or drank anything in a long time, no matter how optimal my body and everything else is, there is a dip in my performance. Physically, intellectually, that's there. In the Bhriguvalli of Taittiriya Upanishad, that's what we see. Chandogya Upanishad, we see the same thing. Not eating for 18 straight days, you see the manas, the mind stops functioning then. Therefore, for sustainment of this entire body, sustainment of the self, pranas are responsible for it. Therefore, that is where the true self is. Okay, we say, no, let's go even more subtle than this. The vital force that even drives these pranas is that mind. The willpower in the mind, this ability of the mind to have instincts, where you know it, certain instincts. You're driving somewhere, you see, it's not really showing up on your maps that well, or the service isn't there on your phone. You find this one detour kind of path that's there, dark trees there, and no houses or anything. There's an instinct within your mind, that says don't go in there. Now, if you ask someone, logically tell me why you're not going in there, there's no logical reasons here. It's a gut instinct, gut feeling. That ability of the mind supersedes any other function of the pranas or anything. Something very unique that we have in our minds. Animals have it as well, these instincts. So the way I say that is, my mind weighs the pros and cons of things. I'm different from this vital force, all of this. Yet even more subtle than that, we even say the intellect is the self. In what way? This is what I'm building towards now. At the intellectual level is where I say, I am doing this. I accomplished that task. I met this particular challenge. This is this idea of doership and experiencing. Kartritva, doership, bhoktritva, experiencing. Now, we're supposed to dismiss kartritva and bhoktritva. That's the essence of the shloka, is what that's saying. Do you see how many more other layers we have to tackle in that process? This tackle of this process of not seeing any other entity as the self, then going to not seeing this body as the self, then going of seeing not the sense organs as the self, then going and seeing not the pranas as the self, the mind not as the self, finally then coming to buddhi. So Vidyaranya Swamiji is giving us a lot of credit by just mentioning that one in the shloka. Saying doership and enjoyership you have to get rid of. there is a lot more preliminary steps to get rid of in that way. And again, going back to the third shloka we looked at yesterday, what is the only way to surmount this? Through inquiry. Deep inquiry with the direction of Shastra, under the direction of the Guru, to understand how I can peel each of these layers away. Because this grasping of the identity as Aham Brahmasmi, I am nothing but that Brahman, that substratum, that is way far away from all of this. That's much, much later in the process, after all this legwork has been done. That doesn't happen just randomly. All of these steps we have to take initially. So in this state of outward mental activity then, when I have that antarmukha, what I consider to be I, everything else is bahirmukha, all those external objects, the mind at the same time is showing its own form and the object. The mind is showing its own form and the object. What's meant by that? It's not that when the mind entertains an object, there is an object and then there's this mind completely separate from each other. The mind takes the form of whatever object that is. Meaning, the mind is constantly changing every single moment. As Ishavasya Upanishad tells us, the fifth mantra, this mind is the fastest thing in the world. We say light is the fastest, the mind is even faster than that. Just one cognition of a place that is remembered, I can take my mind there right now, like looking into a postcard. I can feel the way I felt at that moment. Power of the mind is incredible, taking the form of even things that are remembered that way. Now, there's an objection that comes up at this point, that we've exhaustively gone through the nature of mental activities here, but even this is still incomplete. In what way? We see how the mind has these different purposes of cognition, of action, goes about and does things. But the thing that needs clarification is, how do we distinguish this mind from the senses? That's something we've never really asked ourselves before. Granthas like this, that's why I chose this text. It goes into these kinds of deeper questions. How do we distinguish this mind from the senses? Think about it this way. The temperature dropped, right, when we came in here. We kept it nice and cool. That's to keep you guys awake, first of all, if the lecture doesn't do that. But it's also comfortable to have it cool sometimes. It hit 80 degrees outside today. So you say, I feel cool. That's a state of the mind right there. Why am I saying it's a state of the mind? Because I can feel different from you being in the same temperature. I can say, even sitting up here only wearing a t-shirt, I can say I feel warm, which I do right now. You sitting there with that cardigan wrapped up completely, you can still say I feel cold right now, socks, cardigan, pants, everything, and still say I feel cold. Meaning we're in the same situation, it's a state of mind right there. A state of mind that is comparative in so many ways. You and I are Texas bodies living in this state for the past 30 years, therefore we have a certain tolerance in the way we live with this. If a friend came from Chicago or somewhere, this is cold, what are you talking about? Still, they say the same thing being in this kind of a setting right here. So it's objective. To each person, that which seemingly is objective is a subjective experience for each person. So it's a mental thing. Even saying I feel cold. How are we distinguishing that from the senses, though? When do you say this part of the thought is about the mind, this part is about the sense of touch? It's all about the sense of touch. Even saying I feel happy, that's a bit more subtle than I feel cold. I feel happy is more of a subtle emotional thing. Even then, do we see, it's because of what's coming through my senses that makes me happy or sad. I watched the Cowboys lose their third straight game on Sunday with an offense that we're paying millions and millions for. They're not even playing $100 worth of offense. 17 points in a game, what is that? Watching that gives me sorrow because what I'm taking in through my senses. I am happy, I am sad is again based on the senses. How are we separating that from the mind? 8th shloka clarifies that for us here. Idamo ye visheshasyuhu gandharuparasadayah asankaryena tan bhidyat granadindriya panchakam. Indriya panchakam is that noun right there. The 5 different sense organs, indriya panchakam. They all have vishesha syuhu. They're all engaged with objects of the world. But gandha, rupa, asada, these are all those particularities that they have. Gandha, smell. Only the nose is the one organ that has access to the stimuli of smell. No other organ does. Taste, only the tongue. Sight, only the eyes. Touch, only the skin. Hearing, only the ears. That is their department completely. If you ask me, Huddy, is it cold outside? It's not that I put my hand on the window, yes, it smells like it's cold outside. That doesn't work. Certain sense organs have privy to only certain knowledge. Because of this peculiarity, because there is no mixing going on, we say there has to be some other entity owning up what all 5 of these senses are feeling. That is that powerful mind. That is that demarcation we have right there. That's how we separate the mind from the sense organs. Now, there are certain types of stimuli. It can be overwhelming in that all 5 sense organs seem to be giving information to the mind at one time. So someone asked, what is the most comprehensive art form you can think of? If we take art as something for the senses that's appealing to the senses, what is the most comprehensive art form then that at the same time enchants numerous senses? Food, cooking. Think about it. I watch a dance performance, I listen to the music that's there, I see the dance performance. Food is that one, I'm calling it an art form. It has to be physically enticing to look at. It has to smell nice. Taste, duh, it has to taste good. There has to be a nice smell to it as well. And the texture has to feel good too. All 5 senses must be appealed to by that process of cooking and serving food. Sometimes you go to a restaurant and they say, try something new. We went to Rishikesh, okay, all of us brahmacharis after the course. Now, I never knew that momos was like the huge thing in Rishikesh. The moment we got there, everyone is like obsessed. You know, all the temples and stuff were there, but that wasn't their thing. They're like, oh, we have to get momos, we have to get momos. So the first night we're there, we're tired from a, 36-hour train journey, but then all the brahmacharis said, no, we have to get those. So we found from street vendor, you gotta be careful with that. Okay, so they made these momos, they smell really good, and they look like little, bulbs, like onion bulb kind of thing, filled with vegetables. I saw them make it, how they do it, Manchurian stuff inside. You put it in your mouth. It tastes like rubbery. It's like the rasgulla that you get at the Indian stores here sometimes. When you're chewing it, you can hear it's like a squeaky toy, like a dog chews, like that. It has that squeakiness, rubbery taste to it. I can't get over that. I couldn't eat it. Taste was good, smelled nice, looked okay. That rubbery texture that it had to it, I could not bring myself to swallow that food. So some sense organ that is not receptive to the stimuli coming in, the mind will make this decision saying this is either good or bad. Oh, Hari Bhai, why are we going through this whole analysis right here? Why having to separate what the mental functionality is, separating from the sense organs? Because when we make this distinction, we can see what is this ultimate witness, sakshi, that we're looking at? What exactly is it illumining? What various parts of this entire process of perception does it illumine? Because when it comes to the functionality of that first contact with an object, that is the indriyas. In Kathopanishad it said, Indriyas are paranchikhani. They're always outwardly focused that way, constantly making contact with various objects. The next layer on top of that is coordination of those objects. Understanding the taste of this is XYZ. The sight of this is like this. I'm hearing a certain word. All of this happens in the mind. Making that coordinated, putting it all together at once. Because right now you're looking at my hand gestures when I speak, you're looking at me as I'm speaking, you're hearing the words hit your ear, all of that. Next layer then is understanding. These words making sense, that's the buddhi, the intellect, making sense of it. So right now, so far, the sense organs, the mind, the intellect, all are working in tandem right here in this process. Beyond that, understanding is there. Next layer that's happening is an ownership and a doership. I am understanding. Hari is boring. Whatever kinds of decisions you are coming to in conclusions, that is that doership and ownership that is going on right there. That is the role of the ahankara, that individuality, that ego that is making that decision. This witness then, that Sakshi Chaitanya, is witnessing all of these different incremental changes going on, illumining all of them, making them all able to happen. Which is why the example is broken up so much, to show that these are all those moving parts. Now in this next shloka, what do we come to? We first started, the first word of this chapter was Paramatma. We started with Paramatma. We come back to that in the 9th shloka right here, where the objection is, okay, my nature I'm understanding, ultimately I am the doer, is what I think at that ahankara ego level. Does this idea of I am the doer apply to that Paramatma? Here I am doing these small tasks compared to what that Paramatma does of creating this entire creation. I take so much ownership for everything that I do. Does Paramatma not have an even bigger ownership and doership then, based on the creation that he has made? Kartaram chakriyam tadvat vyavritta vishayanapi sphodayed ekayatnena yosau sakshyatra chidvapuhu. The shloka we also find, I think, in Drigdrisha Viveka, the similar shloka, almost the same words, that comes there as well. What's being said right here? What this witness refers to, what that Paramatma essentially is, that consciousness which illumines Kartaram Chakriyam, the doer, the action, and Vishayanapi, even those objects that are perceived. So what's being illumined by that consciousness? The doer, Karta, the action, the Kriya, as well as the Vishayaha, the perceived objects. All of that the witness sees. Why is that important to reiterate right here again? Because that Supreme Self, we say, even in our pledge we say Supreme Self, that Paramatma, despite creating everything, despite being the genesis of all action, is not really acting because there is no modification that is being made to it. When an animal or a human gives birth, there is a modification happening to that being in order to give that birth. A change is happening. When energy is being transformed into different things, a nuclear level turning liquid into gas, all of these different changes that are made, there are modifications going on. If we say that this is hearkening back to those first two shlokas, that Paramatma that is in and through all beings as the Sutra, Manigana, all these different modifications, if we're saying that that Paramatma undergoes change and is in everything, we are saying, dangerously, that Paramatma has an expiration date then. Because anything that undergoes change must perish at some time. That's the logic. Now, if we say that, this entire witness consciousness that is illumining everything, at some point, like this bulb will go off, that will go off as well. That doesn't fit our siddhantas right here. So again, we have to understand that this Paramatma gives rise to this entire creation without undergoing any modifications itself. What is the only answer that makes sense right here? Maya, like we saw yesterday. That's why Maya was introduced in the very beginning of this chapter right there. There's a reason for everything, placement, especially by Vidyaranya Swamiji. Knowing that this doubt comes up later, that okay, you're saying these sense organs, everything changes, therefore they cannot be the self. This Paramatma that you're saying in essence is my identity, that's undergoing changes as well. No. Ishvara is the wielder of that Maya. All those forms are taken within the ambit of the three gunas. This Paramatma wields, illumines those three gunas simultaneously. So the witness's nature is not to do anything. The witness merely illuminates. Now, does that seem useful to us? Any knowledge that is given has to have some use to it, some practical extension or gaining in some way. And we saw yesterday the framework that we introduced in the very beginning. Any shloka we look at in this chapter either falls under siddhanta, fundamental irrefutable principles, or falls under prakriya, some kind of process, sadhana to be taken up to understand it further. Siddhanta or prakriya. Now if we look at these preceding shlokas then, that we've been looking at, 9th shloka, we looked at how it talked about consciousness illumining the doer, action, objects. That's why it's called the witness. That's purely siddhantic right there. 8th shloka that we saw just before this, special qualities like smell, form, taste. Again, that has to do with siddhanta. If we go back to say the 3rd or 4th or 5th shloka that we were looking at, 5th shloka said bondage is caused due to lack of discretion and discrimination. Viveka, thinking deeper and separating real from unreal, is how it's removed. That is a prakriya shloka right there. So like that, with a set of siddhantas, then giving some practical method, that's how the text is laid out. So after looking at this 9th shloka, coming to the 10th one then, what is the next idea that comes up? Because so far in this set of shlokas, we've been introduced to what is the role of this sakshi, this witness. Illumining everything impartially and showing the mechanics of what happens in this intellect, in this mind, with these sense organs, sense objects, contact with the world, all of that. Where in every single thought that I have, every internal dialogue that I have, I see that I understand. I know that I'm deciding, even at that intellectual level, that I know that that's illumination right there. Understanding is one level of it at the intellect. I am aware that I am understanding. I know that I am not understanding. Even that I know and I don't know is not intellectual. There is something else illumining even that thought. That's what we're honing in on at this point. So what does that 10th shloka tell us then? Ikshe shrunomi jigrami svadayami sprashamyaham iti bhasayate sarvam nrityashalasthadeepavat. Nrityashalasthadeepavat, the witness that's placed as that lamp in that dancing hall, it illumines all of these thoughts. Jigrami, svadayami, meaning I'm going, I'm tasting. Sprashamyaham, I'm feeling different things. All of these, I see, I hear, I smell, I taste, I touch, all of those thoughts are being illuminated. So it's starting from the very grossest level, taking us more subtle again. Now, what's the purpose of reiterating this right here? That every single sense experience, and therefore every interaction of this mind with what is internal and external, that is being illuminated by this consciousness. Anything that is illuminated by this consciousness is unreal. Anything that can be seen, anything that can be perceived, must have a form to it. Anything with a form to it must have parts in it. Anything with parts in it is subject to modification and change, and therefore has an expiration date. Taking these logical dominoes like this, what I have to keep remembering, I know it's been said the third time now, I see, I taste, I touch, it illumines all of that, meaning anything that is being illumined by this Sakshi, I have to take as this is unreal. For what purpose? That very viveka we talk about in the 6th shloka that's given. Understanding that means separating out very clearly what is real, what is unreal. Discarding my reliance on what is unreal. Letting go of my attachment to what is unreal. That is that next step to take. That's where the prakriya aspect comes in right there. 11th shloka then. At this point, it goes into something deeper. One other aspect of this entire gambit that we're looking at. Nrityashala sthito deepaha prabhum sabhyamscha nartakim deepayed visheshena tadabhavepi deepyate. That lamp that we're looking at in that hall. Previous shloka we said illuminates these sense organs that are able to say, I taste all of this. Now we're saying it illuminates that patron, that Raja that's there, the audience, and the dancer. But what's the key here? It illuminates all of them uniformly. That's point number 1. Uniformly illuminates all of them, no partiality. Number 2, it illuminates their absence also. Number 1, it uniformly illuminates all of them. Number 2, illuminates their absence also. Why? Distinctions may exist in the world that I have created in my own mind. I make distinctions of there are good people and then there are bad people. I make distinctions of there are things that I like and things that I don't like. I make all of those. Within consciousness, there is no such distinction there. It illuminates everything without any kind of bias whatsoever. Why is that important to see? Again, going back to a point yesterday, there is no such thing as something is divine versus something is satanic in our religion. That's not the idea of good versus bad that exists. Anything that is a product of Maya is expressed through these 3 gunas of sattva, rajas, tamas. All of them are equally illuminated. They're all different functionalities and fluidities between them. They're all equally illuminated by that consciousness. Therefore, this consciousness does not do anything. Does not do anything. In its mere presence, things happen. One example that Bhagavan Sri Adi Shankaracharya gives of this, found in Vakyavritti, a beautiful text that goes through that whole Tattvam Asi Mahavakya. There he says, this idea of not doing anything but things happening in its presence, it's like a magnet with iron filings. You take a powerful magnet, a big one, the iron filings just leap onto it. What is the magnet doing to make those filings move? Nothing. Its very nature is facilitating that. Its very nature is to have that magnetism, therefore they come to it. Atmabodha, we find a beautiful example of the sun as that Sakshi Chaitanya. The sun rises and shines, and this is before lights and everything were there. That is how work naturally happens then. When the sun sets, work stops. When the sun rises, its light is illumining everything, and everyone works. It illumines a bright, beautiful, ornate murti. It also illumines a pot of dirty water also, without any kind of distinction. That mere illuminating factor makes everything else happen. Now, if you were to ask, what is the sun doing then? Even to facilitate photosynthesis, what is the sun doing? It's not doing anything. The very nature of it makes all of this happen. So the nature of this consciousness, this sakshi, witness of everything, is to not do anything, but to illumine everything. So knowing, even I don't understand, knowing that I don't understand is that witness functioning right there. It is witnessing. Now, what's the next layer that we have to go to in our thinking now? Pausing on the shlokas for a bit here. This next layer to see is, even in the absence of all of this, the illumination is still there. Meaning, if there was no world and there was nothing to illumine, would we still call Chaitanya as Sakshi, the witness? Would we? It illumines all the happenings of this world, this entire jagat that we see, all of the sense organs and all of the things that we do. If none of those existed, would that Chaitanya, consciousness, still be called Sakshi, the witness? It's like calling a brahmachari a father, right? There is no product there, yet you are giving causehood to it. There is nothing to witness, yet you're calling it a witness. Calling Sakshi, this consciousness, as a witness, even that is a compromise statement that we're making. There's something in this whole process, two words I want to introduce today. Adhyaropa, apavada. Adhyaropa, apavada. Adhyaropa is intentionally putting on a superimposition. A superimposition is putting something somewhere where it does not actually belong. Appointing a certain status to something. Superimposition. For instance, what are those classic examples then? If see these different cloths and everything that are there? If I were to get like a crystal is clear. And like a prism, it takes on whatever color it's next to. If I put that crystal prism right next to the purple cloth right there, that crystal ball looks purple. I put it next to the green one, it looks green. From a distance, especially from where you're sitting, you'll say, yeah, that ball is purple, that ball is green. That's not actually true. It looks that way because the color of the cloth is superimposed on it right there. Another classic Vedantic example that you've heard, no lecture is complete without this. What am I pointing at? The snake on the rope. Only one thing's existing there, that's the rope. Because of my delusion, what my misapprehensions are, I put something else on there, I put the snake on there, and I'm convinced of that. That is what superimposition is. Now, in all the examples we've seen, these are unintended superimpositions. Here, consciousness was minding its own business. It was not saying anything to anyone, was not hurting anyone, was not asking us any questions. We are the ones that went and said, oh, this consciousness exists. We are saying this world also exists. Therefore, you are a witness of this entire world right here. And the consciousness may feel, I was just minding my own business. There's no world. No, there is a world. No, there is no world. No, there is a world. Everything is real in this world. Okay. You are the witness. You're seeing everything. I'm actually not seeing anything. No, you are seeing everything right here. Gaslighting consciousness into thinking, it's a witness right there. That's what we're doing. For what purpose? To recognize that consciousness is different from anything else we are assigning this label of ultimate witness right there. That is what we are doing. As a constant reminder that in every single thought, this witnessing capability is there. Instead of focusing on the multitude of thoughts that we have, focus on that witnessing aspect, understanding that as myself is the goal. That's why this whole analysis is taken up. Through each and every one of these prakriyas, processes and frameworks of thinking, ultimate goal is to see how does this help me understand what my true nature is. Now, we've talked abstractly for a day and a half about all of this. What is the practicality that must make sense to me at this point now? Practicality clearly is that if I recognize this witnesshood in and through every action, that is when I can separate myself from getting involved in everything that is happening. That sakshi bhava, first time we're using that word now. Sakshi bhava is that attitude of witnesshood, simply observing. How many times have we seen Gurudev say, talking about the mind, simply observe the thought as it passes by, no judgment on it, no attachment to it, no aversion to it, simply observe that mind. It's like how you observe cars going by on the freeway. You don't jump into every car and go on it. You simply observe and let it pass. For whatever time you need to be attached to something, be attached to it, then letting it go. Now that I'm traveling a bit more, and I travel alone for the most part, right? So usually how many books can you read? How many songs can you listen to? I like to people watch sometimes. There's a game I like to play with myself. You sit there, there'll be a person walking or playing with their kids or something. You assign your own backstory to that person. Make up a name, what their name might be, looking at them. Then you make up what their story is. Okay, so this family that is traveling right here, 2 young kids, they're visiting their grandparents in Denver. That's why they're here at the Dallas airport. This little kid is crying because they didn't give him breakfast in the morning. They had to rush over here. You know, the dad keeps saying, I have to go get this magazine, this and that, because he wants his wife to take care of the kids. He's not the one willing to be there. You make up these little backstories like this. It's fun doing that, right? Then they get on your flight with you, they get off the flight. They don't even know that you're doing this. You don't go and talk to them or anything. But you sit there and you can make up stories like this, that, okay, they've been through this, they've done that, everything. Now, imagine a situation where we get off the flight. Seeing that family leave the baggage claim, I start crying. Saying that, man, I had such a good time making a story up for these people. You know, I guess this guy must have gone to college at this school and done this kind of a job. Now they're leaving, I'm never going to see them again, I'm feeling sad, and I start crying. You would put me in a mental institution if I did that. You would say, you're being crazy, what's wrong with you? How can you be attached like that? Similarly, I have also made up these kinds of stories for every single attachment that I have in my own life. You can say, no, Haribai, these are real experiences. That was a made-up experience you were doing. Here, these are real interactions that we've had. Okay? Real from which standpoint? From that ultimate standpoint, where this world does not even exist, where every fleeting change is simply a modification, this sharira is just some encasing, none of these experiences are real then. Yet I find myself bogged down in and through every supposed real experience that I have. The witnesshood of simply observing it and letting it go, that does not even come natural to me. Forget having that be my first nature. That's not second, third, or even fourth nature. I jump into every single thing. That's why this text gets so much attention, this Nataka Dipa. That which is underserved. We'll all watch the dance performance and the music, we'll marvel at that and the audience and everything, great. That entity facilitating all of this, that is my ultimate source. That witnesshood is something to cultivate. The difference between me and the Jivan Mukta is the Jivan Mukta can go through all of these experiences and not feel bogged down. Not feel that stress and strain of everything happening. The difference is I can go through these same experiences, and I can let every one of these experiences create a dent in my personality, some kind of baggage I have to carry through. These are the vasanas that are created right there. So understanding what Sakshi Chaitanya is intellectually as an exercise, it is rewarding, yeah. To go through these different layers and say, this is not my identity, not this. Even in the thought, making these dissections and saying that illumining thought is that Sakshi, that's all fun to do. What is the practicality, however? Am I able to step away and simply look as things happen? Now comes the objection. Is this saying we must be callous in the way we look at the world then? That when we're going through something or anything is happening, just say, I'm not affected by it, I'm standing on the side. There could be some sad event happening, everyone else is giving condolences or being sad, and I say, oh, I'm removed from this. That's not what it's saying at all. From that standpoint of interacting with others, we must be like others. If there is a sad event, we must be remorseful for what's happening. If there is something celebratory, indifference is not sitting there as if we're sad when everyone else is happy. That's not spirituality at all. All this is for my internal understanding. Externally, be in the way that is acceptable to other people. No need to be someone who's a Vedantin externally when celebrations are happening, saying, oh, it's your birthday. One more year closer to death right here. This is just Sharira. This goes by. No need for that nonsense right there, okay? Celebrate when it's time to celebrate. Internally, all the while knowing, from that highest standpoint, that everything that goes on is merely temporary. Can I hold on to what is permanent? And this indifference is not apathy. Indifference is being even-minded, not getting tossed too high or too low by what happens. This idea of Sakshi Chaitanya and that Sakshi Bhava, that is how I keep that going. By being that witness. Now, how is this practiced on a daily basis then? What is that meditative capacity that's used? Am I able to merely observe thoughts without holding on to them like a virus and going on with that thought? This can be the most frustrating experience to take on. So the first stage, shutting off all the sense organs that I can shut off. We're going again from the gross layer to the most subtle, like we saw here. Shutting off those sense organs. Closing my eyes and not seeing anything is relatively easy to do. Smelling and not smelling anything, that's not in my control always. Hearing things, not in my control. I can't close all these organs. As much as possible, though, closing the external stimuli off. Next layer then is making sure there is no attachment to any lingering thought at that moment. I could have gotten in a fight with someone a few hours before. I may be anxious about something else coming up that day, letting all of it drop. Simply observing this mind. What is the nature of this mind right now? Not deliberately trying to clear my mind either. Seeing where does this mind go at rest. And then a thought will arise. It's cold in here. Observing that thought, simply letting it go. Actually visualizing that thought leaving me right there. I will not entertain this thought. It's there. It goes. Having a good thought and celebrating at it, that's getting distracted. That's not being a Sakshi. When a vulgar thought comes up, beating myself up for it, such a bad thought I had, such a bad thought I had, that is also being attached to that thought right there. Am I able to just see that thought go by? That is the role as this Sakshi. For what purpose then? Everything has to have a purpose. The more I can separate myself from these thoughts, the more I can abide in what the true nature is and not get tossed by everything that goes on. Hari Bhai, we've tried this so many times, there's really no point to it. When we don't know what the full reason, the full effect of it is, there will be no point. We've always been told, clear your mind, that's the way to be peaceful. Why? Why is it the way to be peaceful? So that I don't attach myself to each and every thought. That's one thing to consider practically in going through this. Second thing, we assign so many opinions to every thought that comes to our mind. Watching the news yesterday with elections going on and everything, everyone has, like to a 10 what their opinions are and everything that happens. And there's such varied opinions as well. We fall into that kind of culture in our mind as well. We see something in an instant, split decision right away, it's good, bad, we assign it that way, and we either damn that thing or we elevate that thing. That's what we do. That kind of a practice makes it to where we look at the world as a dichotomy. Those things that are conducive to me are good, those things that are not conducive to me are bad, therefore I will go for what's good, I will stay away from what's bad. Sakshi bhava then is one step, not putting that superposition or conditioning on every single thing. Because when I put that upadhi, that conditioning on every single thought that comes, putting a label on it about this is good, this is bad, this is what I think, I become rigid that way. So one step, merely observing the thoughts that come and letting them go. Second step, can I keep from editorializing on every single stimuli that comes? And you've been around people, right? Not even internally. They externally have to give their opinion on every single thing that's there. Have you been around those kind of people? Some of you are saying yes, some of you are saying no. If you're saying no, that means you're the person that's like that. It becomes annoying for everyone around them. Or everyone's outfit they see, there's a comment on it. Everything that happens, there's a comment on it. That's what my mind is doing constantly. That kind of mental clutter and dialogue that is always going on, that serves as a baggage that will sink me. Every one of those opinions that comes up in the mind, imagine that opinion like a dumbbell that's being attached to my body. I can't move after a while. That's what happens. So those two steps are the practical steps we take from these set of shlokas right here. Now, tomorrow, we go into a new layer of thinking. Tomorrow we look at what is the ultimate effect of the Sakshi Bhava then? Why do we even require a witness? If this witness were to disappear, what would the situation be? There is no question that is not delved into by Vidyaranya Swamiji. So we look at that. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om